Welcome back, guys, to the Talking Live podcast with Ryan and Suneet. It's Saturday morning, pretty cold and chilly outside, but here we are one more time. Ryan, how are you, my friend?
I'm good, brother. I feel like all of our podcasts are going to start in the same way, in which we are referencing the dire weather that we're currently facing. But it looks like you got a blanket around you, so you're looking cozy today.
I'm cozy today, and I've got my staple coffee all ready to go.
Oh, I've already gone through about 3 cups of coffee. My coffee consumption at the moment is outrageous. It's always been outrageous. I mean, I enjoy a cup of coffee, but in these quarantine times, it's just too comforting in the cold weather. You know?
Cozy. It's real cozy.
But what's been going on with you? What's new in the world?
No, actually, I did want to say something to you. You know, the other day, I was looking. Have you got Trent Alexander-Arnold or Andy Robertson on Instagram?
I haven't got them, but they did come up on my Facebook feed, and I thought, what's it called? Wingman.
Wingman, yeah. Wingman.
And I saw one episode in which they're driving in their G-Wagon or something, and they're doing something. I was like, this is an interesting episode. Is this them like out of their own back doing this thing, or is this like a TV thing in which they're kind of filling in?
I'm not sure if it's. I don't know if it's off their own back. I feel like Liverpool have obviously put a little word in their ear, like the people want to see some Robbo and Trent, right? And I watched a few episodes. I actually watched all the episodes now. It's just like 10-minute quick. Like there's like an Instagram, IGTV, I think they do it on.
Yeah.
Obviously upload to Facebook as well, but obviously they just roll around in the car and they're just basically talking and they just.
And is that translating to Liverpool's performance on the pitch then?
Wow.
They're distracted.
Wow. We don't need to go there. No, the question I actually wanted to ask was, obviously there's two of them, the wingmen. Okay. Out of me and you,
okay,
right, who would be Trent and who would be Robbo? I want to know your response to this.
For me, it's quite a simple one. In terms of if it's show dynamics, I don't know because I've only watched one episode.
Not talking about show dynamics.
If we're talking football, is that where we're going here?
We're talking football personalities, the way they play on the pitch. Who is you? Who is me? In terms of our personalities. Obviously, I don't play football. Ryan does, so we can't talk about matching football ability because that's
okay.
But we just talk about their personality on the pitch compared to our personality in real life. Who's Trent and who's Robbo?
That's a hard question for me because you're the Liverpool fan. You're the one who's eyeing them up and knowing their personality. I'm only knowing them from a basic football.
Well, let me give you their personalities, and then you tell me. So obviously, Trent's a silkier, pings a pass for 90 yards. Not as much as a dog as Robbo is. Robbo is your stamina, heavy, passionate, aggressive Scotsman, running 90 minutes. Putting in tackles, running, charging back. Trent's a lot more smooth, a lot more silky, David Beckham-esque.
Okay, that's the.
Doesn't really need to defend that much because he's so good going forward.
Thank you for the summary. Now I completely know what you mean. Okay. That's an easy answer.
Go on.
To be honest, I'm Trent.
No, you're not Trent.
I'm Trent, and let me tell you why. Okay, Trent's the type of talent, right, which is. Even when he's having an off day, there's still a spark. As you just described, Robert, there, he's tough. He's working hard. He's kind of that James Milner-esque in that he's just the grinder, but he's there. He's reliable. Okay. While I would like to take some of those traits as well, I'd like to think I have a bit of spark. Bit of spark in my day. Bit of spark in my walk. And Suneet, so then I'm coming to you as Robbo.
Okay, I'd like to hear this. I would really like to hear this, Ryan. I would like to hear how you think I'm Robbo. Go on.
I'm not gonna say that you're the aggressive, bullish type that's coming through, but you're reliable. You're there. You know what I'm saying? And so don't want to go in too much. Direction. But if it's just a straight up answer, I'm Trent.
Okay, and now I'm gonna tell you why you're wrong. Okay, I'm gonna happily tell you why you're wrong. First of all, to my fellow Liverpool fans, obviously Robbo is a legend. I appreciate everything he does for the team. Hard grafter, incredible work rate, great defender. got a fantastic ball. Okay, let's go the pleasantries out of the way. But I am Trent, and I'll tell you why I am Trent. Because that's what you do. You're waking up at 7:30, energetic, ready for the day. Look, where's your coffee? You already had 3 coffees today. I'm sure you sprinted to your coffee machine this morning. I know you did. You don't even need to tell me. You got up out of bed and ran to your coffee machine. You're very efficient. You probably got a bit of work done this morning. You're ready for the day. You're attacking. You're aggressive. You've got that mentality. I'm a lot more silky and smooth. I roll out of bed. I stroll to my coffee machine. I have a nice shower, relax in there, take my time. Efficiency. I know I don't need to be putting in the hard yards because I've got the talent. I've got the skill to bring that up a bit later. I don't need to be rushing. I'm not sprinting into the coffee machine like you. I'm not putting in those hard yards. I'm just efficient.
So am I doing too much? Is that what you're saying?
There's nothing wrong with either way. There's nothing wrong with either course. Both of them are world-class fullbacks. Maybe the best in their position. Just saying. Interesting debate. Anyway, the people can let us know who they think we are.
But I like that we've started off talking about sports because there's a lot to talk about in the sports world as it's going on. Have you been keeping up with the NBA this week? It was the draft.
Of course, I've been keeping up. Yeah.
Any highlights, standouts for you?
Well,
I have mine.
Okay. Well, for me, I mean, the only person I knew in this draft was LaMelo. So the rest of them, I'm not too sure about. I'll tell you what I am interested in is yesterday was free agency, and I just saw this morning that your boy Montrezl Harrell was at the Lakers now.
Well, the Lakers are doing.
They're doing bits.
They're doing bits because I think we'll talk about Schroeder.
Yeah.
Going to the Lakers.
Yeah.
And Dwight Howard, he even tweeted, "I'm staying at the Lakers," and then. I don't know how long after that was after the 76ers. But no, good that you mentioned LaMelo because I saw a stat yesterday in which LaMelo and Lonzo are the first brothers to be drafted top 5 in history, top 5 of the NBA draft in history. And I thought, wow, that's a stat. So let me just go, and we're taking a look at their family. And all the talking that LeVar's done over his whole time. And we're thinking, yes, he talks a lot. Yes, he's kind of maybe too big-headed, arrogant and whatnot. But he brought 2 of his sons top 5 in the NBA draft. And they have their talent. I don't know how it feels to be, what's the middle one called?
I think it's Liangelo. Jello?
Something like that. It's bad. The fact that we don't even know his name. And also, let me just mention, why does he look different in terms of like, why do Lonzo and LaMelo, right, look so similar as brothers? Both seem to have that play in that certain way. And LiAngelo is just like the outcast. I feel bad for him.
I feel like you do get that in the family though. You always get them. Yeah. There's always that one person in the family who's like, you don't really look like the rest of them. You look a little bit different.
What happened here?
But you know what it is, that, and the question is though, would they, without LeVar, been drafted top 5? Without their father, do you think both of them would have been drafted top 5? I don't think LaMelo would have. I think Lonzo would have, because there was a hype around Lonzo which brought about the family. I don't know if LeVar doesn't do what he does, makes the noise he does for all, because even when Lonzo was getting drafted, he was still talking about his other sons. He was making sure that they were still heard. Like, yeah, this is Lonzo's time, but don't get it twisted. We've got 2 other guys coming up too.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure because LaMelo then went to play professionally, didn't he? He went to Australia.
He went professionally. I think he played in Europe first. I'm pretty sure, maybe Lithuania or somewhere. Played somewhere in Europe. Then went to Australia, and then he's finally come back here. But it's interesting that you say that you think Lonzo would have been regardless and LaMelo wouldn't.
Yeah.
Because my personal opinion is that I think LaMelo will be a better player than Lonzo.
However, would you have said that before Lonzo started playing in the NBA? Because remember, the hype around Lonzo was big.
Yeah, the hype was big. But this is the thing, it's hard to compare the two because, let me just say what you're doing here. You're saying Lonzo was the first, right?
Yeah.
So LeVar's created that snowball effect so that he's already mentioning everyone else. So LaMelo never really had a chance to stand on his own 2 feet. You know, he's already got the hype's already there for the fact that his brother's in the league. So now they're wondering what's coming after him. And then you've got to think about the routes that they've taken, right? So Lonzo has played in college in America, right? I think he played at UCLA. So when you're playing within the American system, playing within the NCAA March Madness, the hype is huge. You know, that's the factory of NBA basketball athletes coming through America. They're going from high school, they're getting their little videos on Instagram, everyone's getting hyped, like you see like the Zion Williamson. Then you say, okay, here's these kids, they're dropping 50 on the weekends. Then they come into university, can they ball? You know, now they're on ESPN every week. So Lonzo, then it's starting to do a bit. He's starting to show out. He's starting to show he's got lots of talent. And LeVar then takes over the world.
Yeah.
The guy's talking. And yes, I believe that boosted him, boosted his rating up. But I feel that cut out LaMelo's chance to just be viewed as you know, from scratch. He's always got that taint of Lonzo was the first, how he's going to live up. LeVar's talked him up this whole time. So when LaMelo decided to then not go to university and play in Europe, he kind of goes off the grid. Like, what you're watching him on highlights and stuff, you're hearing him, but you're not really able to compare their paths anymore. So I think the fact that he's been able to do that, because really LeVar hasn't been, he comes in the news now and then just when he's talking some crap, but you haven't been able to compare their paths, and he's been on the other side of the world. So while people are paying attention, Americans really only care about what's going on in their country. So they're still more bothered about the college sports. So for the fact that LaMelo has then come back and he has been drafted third to Charlotte Hornets, my team, happy about that. I think that speaks a lot about him, and I think he's going to be a better player than Lonzo.
Listen, Michael Jordan was the guy who snapped him up as well, not with anybody. You know? But the thing is, so are you saying LaMelo will be an all-star before Lonzo? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, what, Lonzo's got a 3 year head start,
and he's not looking like one at all at the moment. So it's not like he's close to it.
Yeah, but I don't think LaMelo will. Like, I feel like if LaMelo did take off, it would be his fourth year, that he'd be an all-star. But that's a good question. I don't know. I'll go out there and put a stamp and say LaMelo will.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not sure if Lonzo gets an all-star. Like, to be fair, actually, I'm being a bit harsh. All he has to do is really fix his shot, because he's still a good passer, isn't he? He's still a great passer, but he needs to fix his shot, and he looks like he's trying to do that. I just don't know if anyone cares anymore about Lonzo. Do you know what I mean? And that's what you need. You need a little bit of people to care to be an all-star too, especially when you're fighting for those last few spots. It's about relevancy as well. That does push you up. As much as people don't think it's all about skill, it's not. Sometimes it is just about who's got the hype on them. Who's got the hype on them.
Absolutely, but I think at the same time, like, when you start performing, when you kind of step up and you start carrying a team, and I mean, he's playing in a team with bigger names than him. You know, so and the way he plays though is unselfish. He plays like a nice style of basketball in which he lets those other people shine. You know, and that's his style. So maybe he won't always he won't grab the headlines. You know, but you'll see how he develops, how he goes forward.
Just on your point about the college basketball system in America, I wish it was like that in the UK. I watch college basketball in America. I don't watch it often, but I'm watching it on like clips and that, and I'm looking at the crowds. The crowds for college, and I'm thinking, how do we not have anything like that in the UK? Like, obviously, football is our main sport, isn't it? Yeah. In universities, we're not packing out football stadiums like that, are we?
No, it's interesting though that you say it, because there's a debate to be had, right, on what is a better system, right? So university, the path, the path to professional for all sports in America, more or less, is, and you've got to think it's very school based. Okay, so if I'm just comparing this to English football, where we're playing football and where we're developing at a young age is never in our schools. It's never in our primary schools. You know, it's on Sunday and Saturday. Whereas through the American system, it's all through your high school team, state championships, university teams, you know, state NCAA championships. So they're having to follow this path in which, you know, you have to do a little bit of education, make sure you can just meet the bare minimum, but then you have to take a step into university, which I don't know if is the best thing. You like say you have to be in the NBA for you have to be in college for 1 year before you go to NBA. You have to be in college for 2 years before you go to the NFL. All right. So for professionals, is it the best thing? Now, for somebody who's not a professional, not going to be a professional, someone like me who went to university to play, it's the best thing ever. Because you get that experience of almost living like a professional in terms of the staff that you have, the facilities, the equipment, and then being able to play in big tournaments and being able to play in, you know, good environments that are set up for that, where you wouldn't get that in England. But then in England, you're able to get a more professional development from professional clubs earlier on and break that boundary earlier.
That's a good point. And the only thing I would say is that how many footballers or professional players ever are really, especially, okay, let's talk about the UK actually. We'll talk about these young players coming through like the professional system and they're playing for these teams, right? A lot of them are still, a lot of football teams now separate their younger teams from their professional teams. Only the good players, right, in your under 23s, under 21s, only the good ones out of those are going to play with you, train with your professionals. Now, often they're training at a different facility. I think Liverpool's just got a new facility now where they all train. They're training the same one. But often for the smaller teams, there's a whole different facility for the younger teams.
It depends on the facilities, but if they have the training academy, then they'll probably all be at the same place.
Yeah,
but spread out. You know, you have
spread out. So, but either way, they're separated, right? Now, don't get me wrong. It still will be better facilities than your universities or your schools, obviously, regardless. But these players aren't. I mean, how many times do you see we're seeing more actually recently, so this argument's a bit flawed, but how often do you see a youngster just break onto the scene at 18, 19, around that age? Usually it's, you know,
in football.
Yeah.
I'd say more or less every year. But at the same time, I'll caveat that saying that they doesn't mean that they're going to sustain their, you know, that hype.
Yeah, I guess that's what I mean.
There's always a young player coming on the scene who's got some hype around him, and is he going to break through into the Premier League? Gets a few starts, can he keep it up? Yeah, I'd say it happens more.
Yeah, it happens more. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but if you actually take that in terms of the whole pool of that age group, the whole pool, it's very minimal. If we're talking percentages here.
Exactly. So it's like 0.00%. And that's why you look at the American system and it's like, actually, for the large pool of people, this is amazing. And for the fact that then you're having this college where you're getting loads of fans and, you know, you get to play it, that's crazy, that's cool. But then the other thing is that, like, you've got to understand how so it's called the NCAA, which is the governing body in America for college sports, right? And the amount of money they make, it's disgusting. It's disgusting. And in university, for the vast majority of us, right, it doesn't matter because we're not making revenue off our name. But you're not allowed to be a professional. If you've ever even been considered a professional before university, you can't play sports. You have to be amateur status. So there's kind of a argument, and it's changing. It's changing slowly, but that they're keeping players back because they're now risking injury, especially in NFL, in American football. They're risking injury to go through this and make money for this big corporation, yet they can't make a dime for the name.
That's a mad point, actually. I forgot about that. So exactly, someone like Zion, in his last year, the amount of tickets he must have sold, and he couldn't make a single penny from it. It all goes to the university, all goes to the college. That is crazy.
Exactly. And think about, like, LeBron was like, he was one of the last before they introduced the rule in which you had to go to university for a year. So he didn't go to university. But the rules still applied in high school. Yet LeBron was driving around in a Hummer. The guy had a single, like, was raised by just his mum, right? They didn't have money. Yet this guy's driving around in a Hummer, you know. Of course he's getting paid somewhere. People are like, this guy's gonna make it, you know. And so he even got suspended for a little bit of time for that. And that's just because off his time. Like, look at this guy. He's now getting paid, but he's playing with, you know, high school kids. Why hold somebody's talent? And that's where I think it's. But going back to your point of university sports in England, yeah, it would be cool, because I didn't spend any time here while at university. The only one I've ever gone to is because my brother, GK, for people listening, he went to Sheffield University, and then they have the varsity games, don't they, at the end of the year, in which, like, they play at a stadium, and then they have some good fans. So that had good fans.
Yeah,
right?
No,
you have like varsity games that are.
And I think I'd probably say the rugby games in general get a lot more viewing than football. Just from what I experienced, I could be completely wrong there. I could be talking rubbish, but from what I experienced with my uni, rugby was the hype. When there was a rugby match on, it still wasn't American level fans, but there was some decent viewership there.
Yeah.
But obviously, in the American sports, they don't get fans; they get TV.
I think it's because, do you know, because they're holding the stars from being pro, right? Which means you have star talent in college. And so the level of play you're seeing is TV worthy.
Yeah.
You know, you're seeing Zion in college making people look like a fool. You're seeing these NFL players in college destroying, and then these are 100,000 stadiums. Whereas in England, those players wouldn't even be in university. So all of a sudden, that standard's lower. It was already lower because there's no way to hold a player like that to go to university. So maybe the standard's not as good, and then
no doubt.
And then our system's just different anyway. But
yeah, obviously the standard is up, because if you're good enough, you won't be at university, will you? You'll be in a team. You'll be in a system of team. But the thing is, though, right? I've always wondered this as well. A lot of the time, right, you get, obviously, what I know about the American system too is draft night. I think that's the worst teams get the highest draft. You can't see shifting up the order. I think that's an issue with football at the moment. There's dominant teams in every league, and it's pretty much stays like that. The only real change is obviously the Premier League. Every now and again, you know, there'll be a random team that comes up, might get top, you know,
or gets a new owner.
Exactly, and then they come up. But I mean, in the NBA, in the NFL, the worst team in the league last year, just by simply drafting a talent, could get to the playoffs the next year. It's crazy to think that. And that's what I love about it, the constant action. You never actually know what's going to happen each year. It makes it a lot more interesting.
I think that's, from a fan's perspective, I think it's great. I think it's so, like, draft night. I like the fact that it's like a defined set, that every year this is when you're getting new players, and for the player, like, this is the mark of me entering the league. I think that's wicked. I
was just going to say, no, carry on your point.
Okay, for the players, I'm not so sure about it, because the way that the American system works is you're owned by the team more than you, until you become a superstar. After those initial first years of contract, the team can do whatever they want with you across the sports. And I don't like that for the players. Sometimes I just like to think, because it's so easy as fans to always shit on players.
Yeah.
But sometimes But for the fans, yeah, I think it's amazing. But then again, you've got to compare the sports as well. NBA is a 5-man team.
I was just about to ask that because I was going to
LeBron
say.
move anywhere, they're gonna win.
Yeah. I
No,
was going to say
you
that
know,
because obviously, as a football player, you can't really. There's no way that you'll be able to you'll draft an 18-year-old. And first of all, the chances of them making your starting lineup next year is very slim.
yeah,
But if they do make the starting lineup, for them to actually change your team from, it's just not going to happen. There's 11 players on the pitch, and it's a bigger floor, it's a bigger space that one person is just not enough. Whereas in basketball, it's obviously a smaller court and smaller players, so a one person would make a big difference if he is just an unreal talent. But
exactly.
but the question is with NFL, right? I don't really watch NFL.
Yeah.
Does it work? I'm sure it must work a bit differently then, because surely there's so many players on the pitch, it's such a bigger floor. The draft really isn't that important then.
It
Or
is still important but the change is slower. Like NBA, the change can be immediate.
yeah,
You move LeBron, you move 2 players, or you move a player. That next season, Lakers can go off and win it. You know that can't happen in NFL. And I prefer watching NFL to NBA just because of the way the American sports in general is everything's about a show. You know, they have the halftime show, they have to have the cheerleader. It's all a thing. But I think for the NFL, the change is slow, but it still matters hugely because these players that are coming in, they're, like I said, they're not kids. You know, they've already spent 2 years in university. These guys, a lot of these guys, yes, they still have to adjust, but they're talents coming into the league, and a talent can make a huge difference. And while you can't do it alone, you still need the different pieces. It's all about how good is your team at piecing that together, and that it's more of a maths equation in that sense, because it's not just, oh yeah, let's pick him and that we don't worry about it. It's how can that one player fill in that weakness that we have and make everyone else better. Yeah. And I think that's probably more related to football in a way.
Yeah, we'll be interested in it if we had just a one-off season where we just did a draft night. All the best talents, the young 19-year-olds who are the best in the league.
That would be weird, wouldn't it?
Who's bottom of the league right now? I don't even know. Who is it? Brighton or someone?
I don't even know in Premier League. No.
West Brom just pick the best 19-year-old.
What I want to ask you, I've been thinking this since we're talking about sports, talk about LaMelo, talk about maybe LeVar and how he acts. I want to talk about role models in sport, right? Because this kind of came up the other week when I watched Lewis Hamilton secure his seventh all-time greatest race F1 driver of all time, right? Doesn't get the recognition he deserves, I believe. That's probably another question. But this guy,
since he doesn't get the recognition he deserves, let's give him some recognition. Let's talk about Lewis Hamilton for a bit, because he doesn't. You're right. He doesn't get the recognition he deserves, and I don't understand why. I'm not a massive F1 fan. Okay, my dad loves F1. He loves Lewis Hamilton. I'm not a massive F1 fan, right? But I know Michael Schumacher. I know who Michael Schumacher is. I know that he's considered the greatest of all time in the F1 world, right? Now he shouldn't be. Because Lewis Hamilton has broken every record there is. He's got the same amount of championships as him. He's got way more wins, way more poles, way more podiums. And I'm just thinking, nobody really talks about Lewis Hamilton. I don't really hear that much noise about him. And why not? And also, what I think is so crazy about the fact that it's Lewis Hamilton doing this, right, is if you actually look at every sport that is played in Britain, the main sports, right, that are played in Britain, can you name a single British GOAT in any other sport? We're talking about even in the conversation. Football, do we have a British footballer who's in the conversation of greatest of all time? No, we don't. Cricket? No, we don't. I don't watch rugby, but I'm pretty sure there's probably New Zealand or Australian or South African players who are more higher regarded than English players in rugby, right?
Yeah.
Lewis Hamilton is British, and he is actually in the GOAT conversation. Even if you don't think he's the greatest of all time, he's one or two. He has to be one or two.
Yes.
That is a crazy stat. We don't have anyone like that.
Let me come back in 2 points. One, along with him being the GOAT of F1, right? the example he sets and the voice he's using constantly, relentlessly, is such a positive note that I don't know how how F1 can't get behind him more. He's literally the perfect role model for the sport or for a sportsman. And then to answer your question, why doesn't he get recognition? Hate to go there, people, but it's because the colour of his skin. It has to be. There is no other way. The way if Lewis Hamilton is doing something, he's more of a he's more of a superstar than any F1 person has ever been, will ever be. Right? Hangs out with rappers, hangs out with movie stars. And I think in the world when people are talking about him in the F1 conversation, they use that as a taint against him for some reason. As in like, he's just this, he's all about the media. He's, you know, they're being distracted by what he's doing and saying off the racetrack, even though it's all good. There's nothing bad there. And not lending it to the F1 conversation in which maybe a white man has just his only conversation, the only time you ever hear him speaking is when you're in a conversation about F1 because you're not seeing him off the racetrack.
Yeah.
And so while it may be hard to hear from other people, in my opinion, that's the facts.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, yeah, I agree with you. I do agree. 100% like I said. It's crazy to me that he doesn't get more recognition. It's mental. I would even go as far as to say Andy Murray gets more recognition than him, and Andy Murray is not in the GOAT conversation. You are not putting him next to Federer, Nadal, Sampras, or any of those, man. You know, he's won a couple of Grand Slams, and he got to number one for a bit, but he is not a GOAT, right? And I'd say he gets more recognition than Lewis Hamilton. People can argue that point, but I would say he does.
No, I would too as well. I mean, if you just look at like BBC Sports Personality every year, how Lewis Hamilton doesn't just sweep up that thing on a regular basis, I don't understand.
Yeah.
The guy couldn't. He
does
nothing wrong. He does nothing wrong.
The only issue with F1. This is not a Lewis Hamilton point. This is an F1. This is why I don't like F1 because I just feel, and this is going to get some F1 fans heated because I've got a few friends who like F1, and there's something about F1 fans, that they just know everything about it. Like, I don't know why, because maybe it's like because it's car based, but they just know about engines. They know about, oil level, tank level, speed. They're just like super scientific, and I just don't get it. And I'm just having a conversation with F1 fan. I'm just thinking, wow, you know too much. But anyway, my issue with F1 is that it's so heavily based around the car. It's so heavily based around the car. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say Lewis Hamilton and bring down his achievements, because obviously, if anyone could do it, why is he on top all the time? But Lewis Hamilton moved to Mercedes, right? Yeah. And he started winning, okay? Before he moved to Mercedes, I think he was in McLaren, right? Yeah. And Vettel was in Red Bull. And Vettel was winning year on year, right? Mercedes car got better, Red Bull car got worse. So they switched. So for me, it's like I would say a lot of it is to do with what car you're in. For example, Lewis Hamilton's driving buddy this year, I didn't even watch F1 and I somehow know a lot about it.
Yeah, but
Bottas, who was he before he moved to Mercedes? Who was that guy? I never heard about him. He wasn't winning nothing. He wasn't getting no podiums. All of a sudden, he's second all the time. That's my issue with F1. It's so good.
It's a good point, and you have to consider that, right? Because it's like, here's a guy. Yes, his real race every week is against your driving partner in the same car, right? That's the only level fair playing field ever that you have every week. The rest of it, yes, in each driving team, whatever, you can see who the talent is. But of course, would it be a completely different game if every single person was driving the same car and showing their proper ability? Now, obviously, you can see their ability, though. You can see, even regardless of what car they're in, that there's going to be a difference. But I do think it goes down when we start talking about conversations across sports. I'm always on that. When we go across sports and we start comparing, you have to take factors like that.
Yeah. But yeah, if we're simply talking about Lewis Hamilton though, that factor is irrelevant because obviously that's not just happened recently. That's always since the start of the F1. I'm pretty sure it's always been dependent on the car. And the car, even if you go back to Schumacher, Schumacher was in Ferrari. I'm sure at the time Ferrari was on top. So I don't think so. In the conversation of Lewis Hamilton, it means nothing because he has still dominated for the, I don't know how many years now he's dominated. And for me, as a guy who doesn't watch F1, so there's not much credibility in my argument. He is the greatest of all time, just based on numbers.
I mean,
numbers don't mean everything, but
I watch it nearly every week. Don't know how much more credibility that gives me, to be honest. But he's the GOAT. Let's end the conversation with that in F1. But I want to go across sports a bit more. Now, we always have, like me and you, we like to have a greatest of all time from an athlete perspective. And I think, that's a great one. I want to get into that again another time. But today I want to kind of focus on these role models. Because, especially this year, when so much things have been happening outside of sports, and we've had sports people trying to speak up, trying to share their message, it makes you think, okay, who in sport is the greatest of all time for not only their ability to play the sport, but for their voice and who they are outside of the sport. So that's what I'm raising to the floor today. Okay. And let's take it across sports. Let's kind of you can categorize it, but any initial thoughts?
For me, there's no debate. But before I let you know,
okay.
I've actually got a sort of counter flip whole opinion on this, but I'll have the discussion first and then I'll give you that, because if I give you that counter, it could just ruin the debate. But for me, it's no debate. It's LeBron James. The guy has created a whole school for underprivileged children to go to for free.
I hear.
Who's done that? Who has done that? Tell me.
No, I hear you. I'm going to break it down because I don't like to jump into one person. You've just gone way too hasty. Straight in. Think you know it. I'm not so sure though.
You got to go in confident. We
are talking about role models, right? But like, I'm going to say for me personally, when I'm just naturally looking at sports talents, I think I'm attracted to the players who aren't always perfect. Yeah, I'm attracted to the McGregors. So, even sometimes the Money Mayweathers, if we're talking in sports, I'm attracted to the players who say in NFL's like the Antonio Browns or the people who are the Rodmans in the NBA. Those type of personalities who...
The villains, so to speak.
The villains, because they're the ones who you get excited about, sometimes. They're the one you can get behind and you're like, I want to carry your energy. And I'm going to... Because people are going to talk about Michael Jordan being the greatest in basketball and his mentality being the greatest to win. But does that make you the best role model?
I think it depends on your definition of role model, right? Because it depends what we're talking about. Obviously, I jumped in straight away with the ideal role model. You want a sportsman to be a good guy. You want a sportsman to not just be greedy, to share his wealth, or to show that he's doing something with his wealth other than just for himself. Yeah. Because obviously the biggest argument in sports that will ever be is they get paid way too much. No matter what sport you look at, they get paid way too much. Why are they getting paid so much? Now, obviously it's supply and demand. But if they are getting paid too much, right, for what they do, I mean, it's not their fault they're getting that kind of money. But if they're showing how to use that money in a more positive light, rather than just on themselves, that is obviously one definition of role model. But like you said, your definition of role model is carrying that energy, the mentality, having that can actually push someone to be successful. Yeah. It might not be the perfect way to go about it. It might, for young kids, the younger generation, that would be potentially a poor role model. But for people our age and people in our sort of circumstance, that's actually a positive role model, because like I said, they may not always say the right things, but what they're doing and the way they're going about their life it's actually like...
Yeah, and I'm not saying
that you want to attain.
Exactly, and I'm not saying that might be my ideal definition, but it's something to consider. Oh, I'm doing the podcast, Dad. My dad's coming. He's saying hello, everybody.
Hello. Little special
Wait.
guest.
Special guest. Okay. I don't know. I think she's gone cycling. Everybody enjoy that. Yeah. I'm not saying that exactly is the way that I'm going to define the role models, but I say it has to be done for consideration, because is that kind of act or that behavior more impactful? You know, is being the nice guy going through your career, you know, doing well, yes, it's good and you're being a good role model, but is that going to impact more people after your career?
Yeah.
And then another point, I was just going to go back to your point and say players get paid too much. Of course, players get paid too much, and like you said, it's supply and demand. And I'm taking the player side of this. I don't think the money they get is what they deserve. They're attracting the crowds. They're playing. It's good, but I think we should go and break down per sport. Okay, who we kind of think is in that conversation. So if we've already said basketball, and I'm going to agree with you. When it comes to basketball, it's not a conversation. LeBron James.
Yeah.
F1, Lewis Hamilton.
Okay.
I've said that. I'm just going to jot these down just so I know.
Yeah.
If we're talking tennis, Roger Federer.
I would say Roger Federer. However, there is an argument made for Nadal. And the reason why I say that is because if we're talking about mentality thing, if I'm looking at a player who looks like he is hungry to win games, like when he's playing a game, he's in it no matter who he's playing, he's passionate. That is Nadal. Federer is obviously a lot more smoother, like he's a well-spoken man, gentleman kind of player. But Rafa, if we're talking about that hunger, that desire, that someone who, you know, will push other people to be like, oh, I want to be like that guy. That's the kind of mentality I want to be in.
That's a good point there. Because I was being lazy there. You caught me out. You caught me out. Because I'm initially just thinking, who have I heard my whole career that's never really put a foot wrong, but being at the top of the conversation?
But that's what we're saying. We're not talking about who is the greatest. What we're talking about, definition, interpretation, who can be in that conversation and who actually is gonna push more people down the line. And as much as we talk about Federer, and I love Federer, he's beautiful to watch, but is he really having that much of an impact on people?
But when he finishes his career, right? Because if we compare Federer and Nadal, who's won the most trophies?
Oh, Federer, yeah.
Okay, I mean, when he's finished, right?
Yeah.
People are going to remember that he was a nice guy, but they're also going to remember that he's won more than Nadal's. So instantly he goes to top of mind first, and then you add on that role model bit in order to get there. You know what I'm saying?
I like that point.
Because I see what you're saying with Nadal, though. Like, that's a good point, because I look at Nadal, I'm like, if I was trying to model myself around a player, this guy has been winning his whole career, right? Still looking like he's hungry. The guy needs some bread just to fill up. Get some bread and Lurpak, man, because
I'm telling you,
he's to fill up.
He's had 1% body fat his whole life, I feel like. But the only issue I have with Nadal is because real tennis fans who listen to this might be like, what are you on about? Nadal will overtake Federer, because I don't think it's that far off.
No.
But if you take out, and this is a crazy thing to say, but if you take out Nadal's French Opens, it's not close. And that's the majority of Nadal's Grand Slam wins, is the French Open. He wins on clay all the time. That's my only issue with Nadal. Like, don't get me wrong, he's obviously great, but he just wins in the same court every time. It's like, come on, do something else.
Well, the thing is though, I just had a quick look up, because I got to check my facts here sometimes. In terms of them playing each other, right? They play each other 40 times, and Nadal has beat Federer 24. Federer's 116.
That is a crazy stat.
So that's just them.
That's not close. I didn't realize that stat.
But that's them against each other. Does that mean that they've won more trophies, like as a whole?
No, I think Federer beats him.
So let me just confirm total trophies stat, because that's another conversation then. You know, you're saying 1-on-1, who's beating who? Okay, but who's got the mentality to win the most trophies?
Yeah, yeah. But then I think you have to factor in Nadal's injury record as well. I think Nadal's been injured for a little bit longer, and he's missed a few out. Does that come into play?
I think it's hard. I think you need to stay relevant. I think you need to play.
Yeah, 100%. But the thing is, if you notice, we're only talking about people in our era.
Yeah.
This is clearly a generational thing. But obviously, when it comes to role models, it has to be generational. Because we're talking about our role models, not talking about, our dad's role models.
Exactly. So, and I hate when the conversation, right, moves to people that are like, oh, he's the greatest of all time. Someone before we were even born. Bro, you did not watch him. You've watched 2 YouTube videos and listened to some people telling you this. Make your own opinion with your own eyes.
We're going to have that conversation in another podcast because I'll get very heated on that. I'll get very passionate about that point. Don't you worry, my friend.
So let's career wins. Roger Federer 103, Nadal 86. So, I mean, if you're going to go, Roger Federer is 5 years older, so you could say Nadal has some time. But there's other people in the world, such as Djokovic, that are taking a majority of those trophies too.
The question is, though, this isn't a greatest of all time debate. This is a role model debate.
Well, that's the thing, though. Who are we taking forward? Who are we taking forward from this conversation? We look like we've narrowed down on these two. And that's where we're kind of... I
think for our era, it has to be those two. I think that for our era, it's Federer and Nadal. It has to be.
Exactly. So who are we taking forward for tennis? I'm taking Federer.
I like Federer. Federer. I just like he's just a guy who you can get behind. I just like looking at it, the way he hits that backhand and his face. He's got such a nice face, hasn't he? Just feel like he can't do no wrong.
He can't, man. He just moves in a room and you're just like, you probably just be like, look at that guy. He walks the water.
He's humble. Yeah, I mean, you feel like he talks to people on the same level. He doesn't talk down to you. You know?
He's make you friends. He invites you around for a cup of tea. You know, you go on a walk with him. It's calm.
Yeah, I feel like he's the kind of guy who'd be like, hey, do you want to come have some food with the family? You know what I mean? He wouldn't feel the type of way about it. You know, he's got a seat ready for you. There's a plate.
Okay, so we've done a few sports. We haven't even got to football yet. I mean, that's the one that's where the biggest conversation should be around for us. I mean, it be more of our knowledge base. Who's in that conversation for football?
Okay, again, this is all about definition. I think Rashford recently has put himself in that conversation based off what he's done.
Yes, okay. I'd say recently, but we remember it's kind of, you have to be in GOAT status.
Yeah, because we're talking about influence, aren't we? Yeah, so Rashford doesn't have that influence yet, but in a few years, if he stays on top, he's already looking like...
To be honest, I'd forget about Rashford. Let's move on higher than him.
Okay, sorry. Okay, I'm saying I'm going to go down the Nadal argument again.
Okay.
Cristiano Ronaldo.
Okay.
What? Because for me, the GOAT conversation is separate. I don't put him in that, but that's a separate conversation. Ooh. But I put him in the conversation. I don't put him... I mean, okay, that's another conversation, okay?
Yeah, we're not having that one today.
Influence.
Yeah.
What he does, like his passion, his hunger, his training regime, the way he maintains his body.
Disgusting.
It's disgusting. It is crazy. Like, I think he can go on for another 2-3 years. I wouldn't be surprised. He's 35 now, I think.
I agree with you completely. But let me throw out a few more names just to get...
Throw out more names.
Okay. Ronaldinho. Okay. Let's not forget the impact that this guy had during his time, and the style of play in which changed a generation, and the way that he played with a smile every time he's playing football. This guy's coming, he's smiling the whole game, right? He's one of the greatest in the world. He's smiling the whole game. He's changing the way the game is played, the way kids are thinking about playing football. I'm just going to put his name out there as one of the GOATs of the game and a potential role model. For me, one of my favourite players growing up is Thierry Henry, will be forever. The way we've already described Ronaldo, the way I mentioned in Ronaldinho, I don't know if he has enough to get across the line.
I think, okay, to your Ronaldinho point, I think this is the perfect point of the two different definitions of role models within sports, because obviously when you think about football, Ronaldinho is one of the first players that come to your mind, especially our era, like the hair, the teeth, the skills, everything.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure to watch at times. You just wanted to just watch Ronaldinho. That was it on the pitch, right? But outside of the pitch, I think isn't he still in jail at the moment? I think he might be in jail at the moment, or he was over the past year was in jail. He's a mad alcoholic. He's a crazy.
You're getting confused.
Ronaldinho, do you Google searches, my friend? He's a crazy partier. Yep. A lot of people in Brazil are not a fan of him because of the way he moves.
You know what, folks? I'm gonna have to take a step back here. I did not know he went to jail.
I mean, do your research, my friend, because I'm here to give you facts. Okay, I only talk facts like Rafa. They call me Benitez.
The guy went to jail in Paraguay?
Yep. And find out what. Listen, tell the people why, Ryan.
He spent 32 days in jail before being released on bail. And this is for using a fake Paraguayan passport. What?
Fraudulent behavior.
He went to a max security prison. What? Why does he need a fake passport? Was he trying to hide his identity or something? Okay, I'm sorry, the guy's been removed from the conversation, because at this point in your life, you have to have the no tarnish. Wow.
I'm just saying that's my thing about Ronaldinho. Like, it has to. We're talking about role models. As much as, like you said, I do agree with your point about the Conor McGregor's about that intensity. However, they still have to, like, they can't be tarnished like that. If you want them to be a role model, they can't. You can't have a role model like that. I don't think. I just think I don't know. It depends. Like I said, the definition of role models, like what we're actually in terms of our age, like I said, the younger generation. But for someone like our age, can we ignore something like that?
So for all the reasons you've given, right?
Yeah.
The way you explain Ronaldo as, he's the greatest of all time. Doesn't matter what definition we're talking.
No, that's a lie.
I'm happy to take Ronaldo forward for football.
I'm just trying to think if there's any other names, because we only mentioned 3 really, and obviously there's a lot of footballers.
Exactly, but the fact that they're not coming to the top of my head already is like, where's their relevance? You know,
that's what I'm saying. I feel like Ronaldo's been relevant for a long, long time, and just the way he moves is inspirational. It is inspirational, isn't it? You're like, wow, this guy, man, he's a trainer, he's a hard worker.
His mentality, the way he plays the game, the way everything, and off the pitch, exactly. So let's move on to the next sport, which I think needs to be fighting. I say fighting because there's MMA, there's boxing now, there's different disciplines. But I think there's a lot to be said, right, for the Muhammad Ali, who would also be the greatest of all time conversation for boxing alone. And now, while he was a wild card in the way he spoke, like he had a gift, the things he was speaking about, similar to now, in which people are like taking a stance on race and taking a stance on injustice, Muhammad Ali was doing that before anybody else. And doing it in a big way.
No, I agree with your point. The only thing I would say is the fact that it kind of contradicts the earlier point about eras, because we're talking about our role models here, and as great as Muhammad Ali was, can we say that's our era? Can we say that he's one of our role models? We didn't grow up watching him fight. We didn't grow up watching him, hearing these speeches, what he did. So I feel like, for the previous era, of course, that would be a very good argument. I just feel like for us having a conversation, it's difficult to say he could be our role model.
I get it, yeah. I know you can't go back and forth, and I kind of contradict myself a little bit there. But, I've had pictures of Muhammad Ali on my wall, and I'm thinking, why have I had pictures of this guy on my wall if I didn't live through his era of this? Okay, I know I'm watching things and I'm only being informed from an opinion of a movie or opinion of conversation, but the fact that his legacy's lived on so strong to now, and that we have all this information on what he's done, or do you think I'm still contradicting myself here?
No, yeah, you are contradicting yourself. However, it's hard because Muhammad Ali he's just so transcendent, isn't he, of generations. Like you said, there's certain guys who, even though they're of a previous era, and you maybe didn't watch them or didn't grow up watching them, it's difficult to argue with them because you know, how do we know so much about this guy? How do we know so much about him? You can tell me, I can tell you some of his fights. Rumble in the Jungle, Dueling Manila. How do I know this? Why do I know this? Do you know what I mean? It's like there is something to say for that. Now, I just want to throw up a different guy there. Just another cat in the mix. Which is going to contradict myself about the tarnish, right? But is there anything to say about Mike Tyson coming back? What the age he's at, come back to fight again. We all know what it takes to be in a boxing ring, to get punched for 12 rounds. Now, obviously, he's a tarnished guy. I don't know if we can have him in this conversation.
But see here, I'm gonna go across the whole against the whole sport of fighting, and just think, in the way we started to categorize these players, right? Can we even include boxing and MMA in the conversation? Because in order to be a GOAT in this sport, you need to be someone who's, got something different going on in your brain.
Yeah, killer.
You have to have a bit of a killer in you to get step out, eat, and get boxed and box people down.
Yeah.
And with that is going to come a lot of extra, as it always does for everybody. You have to talk loud. You have to talk arrogantly. You have to set your stage.
However, at the same time, I can counter that point and say, if we're talking about any sport, is there any other sport that has as hard of a training regime or training camp going up to a fight than boxers, MMA people? Is there any other sport that trains as hard as those guys do? Because those guys, from their diet to the hours they're putting in before a fight, that's inspirational. That is the mentality you have to be in to have that, to be so focused and so dedicated to one goal, to achieving this one goal.
I would agree. When I'm initially thinking through that, I'm thinking, okay, what other sports do you have in which there's a build up to an event? So you got to think of like Olympic sports, those kind of things in which these athletes are working solely for this event in which they go hard. But then I'd counter myself in saying and agreeing with you on the fighting, because it's not every 4 years, it's not every 2 years.
Yeah.
These guys will just agree 3 months later and say, okay, I'm going dark for the next 3 months. Putting on the hoodie on, starting to sweat, jogging through the streets.
So, I don't really think, just going back to your point about can we do it for a boxer, I don't know if you can, I don't know if you can, because I'm just thinking Tyson Fury just popped in there, but I'm thinking even he is tarnished, because you have to have something in order to achieve what they achieve. There's something that
it's interesting that you're thinking Tyson Fury before Anthony Joshua.
Well, no, the reason why I would take Tyson Fury is just because of what he went through to come back. But then the fact of what he went through kind of counters that, because he looked to drugs. That's not role model behavior. So can you say the fact he came back from that after 2 years out, after being way overweight, obese, and coming back he drew with Deontay Wilder, but he should have won that fight. We all know that. That's inspirational, but at the same time,
it's inspirational. No, you're right.
But what started that isn't, though. So he's not. You can't put him in that conversation because he was addicted to drugs for a bit, and he let his life go down that path. So can you say you can't really say that's a role model?
The more we had this conversation, the more the opinion of how we should define role model has changed in my head. Like, if I go to Lewis Hamilton, Federer, LeBron, these teams, they're all two nice guys. They're nice guys. You know what I'm saying? It's like it's an easy conversation. Whereas when we start talking about the boxing people or people in football who have had a career but have made it and hustled, because let's go to golf, for example. Now, Tiger Woods, without a question of a doubt, I'm not a golf expert. I've got into golf hugely this year.
Yeah.
And there are people before him who were greats. Jack Nicklaus comes to mind. But he's before my era. I didn't know the guy. I don't know those guys. All I know is Tiger Woods as firstly one of the only black people to be playing golf. Secondly, to change the way people even play the sport, realize that they've got to get fit, realize that they've got to get their body in shape, have a mindset that's just a killer instinct, and continues to do it his whole career. Yet he has this little weird tarnish over a little relationship scandal. Now, I don't want to downplay the relationship scandal.
Well, I wouldn't call it little either.
Exactly, and I said little, and I caught myself saying that. I was like, it wasn't quite little. So he has this thing in which, you think, oh, is he a role model? But then he comes back to win the Masters last year when he really shouldn't be, with the field that is of young talent that are playing. Now, is that inspirational story on top of what he did as a young player in the sport of golf, propelling him to be a bigger role model as his impact will continue to last?
This is why I think it changed. I think our definition in terms of how old we are, our age, our definition is different to the young generation because we know what's right or wrong. So we know when these players are tarnishing themselves, we know that's wrong. We're not talking about a role model just we want to follow their whole entirely. We know that these guys aren't perfect. We're not when we call these people role models, we're not saying, oh, these guys we want to just emulate, we want to copy, we want to be a carbon copy of these people, we want to do it. No, we're saying we can see the greatness in them, and we can see certain aspects of their life where they've had to go through some adversity or they've had to go above the average person to achieve that, and that's what we want to emulate. So therefore, I think for us, I think we can't ignore the tarnished image of a scandal that may have happened here or there, because we know that's wrong. We can put that aside. We can say, well, we know that's wrong. We're not getting involved in that.
Yeah.
But in terms of where we're at in our life, being hungry for success, wanting to better ourselves, wanting to be the best version of ourselves, that's what we want to take away from them. Yeah. So if we're talking about all these players in terms of the best version of themselves, and that being our role model, then I'm not trying to downplay what they've done. I'm just saying we know that we're not going to emulate the bad things. We're looking at the purely of their career path and what they've achieved to get there and what they've done to get there.
So are you saying that's what we should consider? Because I feel I think
we should consider. I think for the younger generation, yeah, of course, they're still learning, they're still developing. The kids these days, they need to be guided on what's right or wrong. They might not always know what's right or wrong. So they definitely come more into a factor, the tarnishing, that 100%. But you're talking about people our age who already know that and and we're just focusing on the.
No, it's a good point. So I see you saying that these players, it's life. People go through shit. People go through tough times, and there are reasons for it. And the way they've responded and the way that they've been able to use that to fuel their career further is inspirational and is going to have more of an impact to people our age that not, like you said, not the wrong people who should be like, oh, you should follow this example and take that forward into consideration.
I think so, yeah, because like I said, we know what's right or wrong. We're not.
It's a good point.
Adults,
it's a good point, but I don't know if we need to. I don't know if it's right. Is it the right thing to overlook that, or should we really try and do as best we can to have a holistic view?
Yeah, it's a good conversation. I feel like it's tough. It's a difficult one to answer. It's like I said.
So I'm gonna because we're getting towards the end of the podcast now. So I want to kind of circle back round to your initial reaction to this.
Yeah.
And I'm going to give you some love on your choice, because I love to talk about LeBron James.
Yeah.
And I see how you go to the school thing. I feel like that's an easy out. To say the guy made a school, I feel like that's an easy out. Oh, the guy did the I Promise school. All of these superstars have foundations. All of these guys are doing things out because they're millionaires. They have money to give to charities all day long. Now, how much publicity they get, it changes. Like I bet there's a lot of NBA, a lot of footballers doing a lot of stuff that is as good as that's not getting the same light. So I feel like it's a bit of an easy out. The way I would say LeBron James has handled himself through his career is the fact that he was the prodigy. He was the chosen one from the minute he started shooting shooting basketball, shooting hoops. I feel like a 40-year-old saying shooting hoops. couldn't get nothing out. But he's had the spotlight on him his whole career. And the way that guy carries himself through everything, through the social media era in which everybody's watching everything you do and still continue to be the greatest of all time. I'm with you. LeBron James. Role model number one.
I just feel like, everything you said I echo, because what he's gone through to now, and just to never really ever have any dramas, any scandals, any spotlight, nothing. Just pure perfection. However, as we're wrapping up this podcast now, if you remember at the start I said I have an alternate view, which the reason why, because I wanted to have this conversation, it's a good conversation to have regardless, but I'm about to contradict everything I just said. Because my true and honest opinion on the whole role model thing, and this is based on the recent past.
Oh, sorry.
A bit outside experience.
Thanks. Give me 1 second. Okay, carry on.
We're back. Okay. My true view is that, and this is just based off the recent past, is that you should not have any role models in life that you do not know. And the reason why I say that is because if you particularly look in the acting world, right, and the professional world and the scandals that are coming out, these are some of the stuff that come out about these people that you would never expect. You would never expect people of this sort of power and this sort of influence and people who people love so much to be doing these things. And it just goes to show you don't know anybody. You don't know these people. You have no clue who they are behind closed doors. You see a glimpse of them on the screen every now and again. You don't not really know who they are. So the only role models in your life realistically should be the people you know. You know, I'm sure for a lot of people, you look at someone like, what was House of Cards actor? What was his name?
Kevin Summit.
Kevin Spacey. I'm sure for a lot of people loved him. He was a role model. They loved his acting, this, that, and the other. Look at him. Look at the scandals that he's gone through.
No.
You don't know what people are like behind closed doors.
Two things I was going to say to that. One, yes, I completely agree with you. Role models shouldn't be, realistically, the role models you should be looking at are the people in your life. But I appreciate you wait to the end of the conversation, because that would have taken us somewhere completely different. Because I agree with you. Yeah. It would have. I would have been thinking of it in a whole different light. But that's the reason why it's good for us, though, to just sit and have these conversations. This is what people are having conversations like on ESPN or Sky Sports. We're allowed to be have armchair opinions.
Yeah, 100%. And the thing is, like I said, even though that is my true opinion, I appreciate and know that that's just not how it works in the real world. People like these guys who we see on TV and we see in movies and sports or whatever, they become role models. That's just who we are as people, man. We want something to attain to. We see something on screen that's like, I don't know, it's the society we're in. We just idolize people. It's what we do because we're jealous. We want to have their lives.
Yeah.
So it's easy for you to sit and be, don't like any of these guys. Don't idolize these people. Don't have these people be role models, and just have only people who you know as role models. It's easy to say that, but when you're sat here, whatever age you are, and you're seeing people the same age as you on these crazy stages, making these crazy amount of money, it's difficult to be like, I want that guy's life. It's difficult, you know what I mean, to not say that. So
yeah, that is a good point. It's that separation from our reality in which we don't see, it's like that Instagram effect. We don't see what's behind that picture. And that's a great conversation for another day. But for now, ladies and gentlemen, that's the third podcast. I hope you're enjoying them. Suneet, I'm enjoying it.
Listen, it's been good. This was another good debate. I'm having a great time, and I'm hoping everyone else listening is having a good time. And this one in particular is really the first sort of debatey one we've had. So it'll be interesting to hear people's opinions on this one, because I'm sure we've missed out a lot of names there. People might be a bit angry with. So it'll be good to see some of those and hear those opinions.
Absolutely. Let us know what you think of the podcast, guys. Let us know what feedback, who you thought the greatest role model is. And for now, that's a wrap. So take it easy. See you next week.
Peace out, guys.